Is this something we want to release to the press, respiratory and fomites?
And how's the public going to react to that?
Hard to say. A plastic shark in a movie will keep people from getting in the ocean, but a warning on the side of a pack of cigarettes...
We're going to need to walk the governor through this before we start to freak everybody out.
They downplay the line, but I think this quote from Steven Soderbergh's Contagion defines the nature of the film, and just perhaps the nature of film itself. Movies scaring us is nothing new. They prey on primal fears to get under our skin, and once they do, become iconic images of that very fear. But once they're under our skin, they tend to stay there. In a 2006 study, Professor Joanne Cantor tested undergraduate students for fearful and phobic reactions to media. Jaws was the second most cited film in that study, with an eerie selection of quotes from the participants left with permanent phobias. This fear echoes out from our personal lives and into the world at large. There's even a name for it: the Jaws effect, the effect fictional narrative has in driving political policy.
And so, you know, and yesterday someone sent me something that Senator Gillibrand in New York, Senator Gillibrand in New York, you know, saw the movie and is interested in introducing legislation in Congress about how our level of biopreparedness.
No one needs to be told that Jaws can frighten you. Just watch it. But it's easy to forget just how impactful a single movie can be. This is nothing new, historically. The airing of Ken Loach's Up the Junction, a hardcore drama about abortion, was screened to 10 million viewers in 1965, igniting controversy but leading to the legalization of abortion just 2 years later. Earlier still, in 1906, Upton Sinclair wrote The Jungle, in an explicit effort to improve abysmal working conditions in turn-of-the-century meatpacking factories. The novel did promote change, but only of food hygiene laws. But fiction is a two-way street. While films may influence our commonly held fears, it works in the other direction too. A fear of disease is an innate human dread, but you can track its popularity in fiction against real-world outbreaks. After the AIDS outbreak began in 1981, the following decade saw an explosion of the body horror genre.
On with the new flesh.
Flash forward 2 decades and we see both Cabin Fever and 28 Days Later released in 2002. A year sandwiched between the SARS outbreak in 2003 and Foot and Mouth in 2001. It would be easy to assume that 28 Days Later kicked off a revival of the zombie...
Don't say that. What? Z word, don't say it. Why not? Because it's ridiculous.
Sorry, the undead persons genre, as it was followed by a sequel, I Am Legend, the Resident Evil series, a remake of Dawn of the Dead, Shaun of the Dead, Land of the Dead, The Walking Dead.
Get excited now to have a top band with us talking about their work for the charity Zombie.
But instead, I think it's the inverse.
The threat to us at the moment from infectious diseases is probably as big as it's ever been and getting worse.
The threat of infection to human mortality on a worldwide scale is still very great. We have to anticipate that there will be a major pandemic at some stage. There will be many deaths associated with that.
Popular culture reflects our very real fears, and I think it's no accident that the zombie genre hit the mainstream amidst a rising fear of a worldwide pandemic. After all, Contagion's popularity has skyrocketed in the last month.
Past 2 weeks, cases of COVID.
Contagion plays as a classy ensemble thriller, but it takes its cues primarily from the language of horror cinema.
As far as Contagion itself is concerned, I mean, for me, despite all the talk about real world, and we talked a lot in that interview about it being, a real world scenario, it taps into that, the horror tradition of, outbreak movies, contagion movies. I mean, there are some films, I suppose, recently that it bears comparison with. See the film, enjoy the film. It's a good, grueling thriller about an outbreak of a disease that's going to wipe out the whole of the human race and involves cranial surgery in a 12 certificate.
Because it is a B movie, isn't it? Really, with that,
with an A-list cast,
yes, with a stunning cast. But you do think. Yes, well, that whole thing about Hong Kong, the disease spreading out, everyone catching it, is the kind of thing that Five Live will be reporting on at some stage in the not too distant future.
But I also think it's basically, it's a horror movie riff. It's the crazies. It is that story. It's
the zombie thing.
Yeah, of course. That's exactly
breaking into the pharmacy and all that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it taps into. That idea as well that is it the disease itself that's the problem, or is it the outbreak of hysteria that accompanies the disease?
Soderbergh uses a lot of horror tropes in very intelligent ways, sometimes subverting them and sometimes indulging them. But whereas a lot of directors do this, I think, just to indulge themselves, Soderbergh uses these reference points for a very specific reason. He's making you scared of something you should be afraid of. Spielberg may have made us afraid to go back in the water, but understandable as that reaction is, it wasn't rational. Shark attacks are so infrequent you're more likely to die from a lightning strike twice. The film has reportedly formed attitudes worldwide that may have led to the great white becoming an endangered species in recent years. As self-defeating as this is, it still stands as testament to the incredible power of a scary movie. In the 2010s, we saw the urgency of the scientific community escalate. There was a looming threat to warn us about. There were articles, there were interviews, there were TED Talks.
I rate the chance of a nuclear war in my lifetime as being fairly low. I rate the chance of a widespread epidemic far worse than Ebola in my lifetime is well over 50%.
The whole gamut of media was used to try and inform the public, but it's hard to make dry scientific warnings go viral. But when it comes to changing attitudes on a cultural scale, oddly enough, fiction spreads the truth more effectively than facts do.
Now in the movies, it's quite different. There's a group of handsome epidemiologists ready to go. They move in, they save the day, but that's just pure Hollywood.
The very fact that Bill Gates is using a movie, especially this movie, as a reference point here is part of Contagion's intended value, I think. Cinema is a popular enough medium to lay a groundwork of understanding for a given subject for a wide array of people. So much so that when Bill references it, we're immediately on the same page.
And I've been in meetings where I can feel it slipping away, where I can feel like the ideas that I'm tossing out are, I don't know, they're too scary or they're too weird, and I can feel the thing. It's just I can tell like it's not going to happen. I'm not going to be able to convince them to do this the way I think it should be done, and I want to jump up on the table and scream and go, do you know how lucky we are to be doing this? Do you understand that the only way to repay that karmic debt is to make something good, is to make something ambitious, something beautiful, something memorable? But I didn't do that.
Director Steven Soderbergh, who I have to keep reminding myself is not the Dean from Community.
Stop! You've hit gold. Save some for the screen.
Has a career that, when you look at it closely, is a catalogue of prescient social issues writ large. Soderbergh is a man that knows the power of cinema. He's a man that knows movies don't just have the ability to scare you, but to educate you as well. It's a fundamental of advertising that in order to sell a solution, you must first introduce a problem to be fearful of.
Women, you're leaking, aging, hairy, overweight, and everything hurts. And your children's clothes are filthy. For God's sake, sort yourself out.
Okay, let's get some help. Beth, Beth.
Sir, you have to go. You have to go.
Horrifying though Contagion is, Soderbergh counters every injection of fear with a lesson in how to overcome that threat.
My wife makes me take off my clothes in the garage, then she leaves out a bucket of warm water and some soap, and then she douses everything in hand sanitizer after I leave. I mean, she's overreacting, right?
Not really. And stop touching your face, Dave.
The mortality rate is fluctuating between 25 and 30%, depending upon underlying medical conditions, socioeconomic factors, nutrition, fresh water.
I need you to get me the names of everyone who serviced this room in the last 24 hours.
Jaws achieved nothing more than an entertained audience. The Jungle made political change, just not the change Upton Sinclair expected. Contagion excels at exactly what it intended to do. That's why I keep coming back to this line, I think.
Plastic shark in a movie will keep people from getting in the ocean, but a warning on the side of a pack of cigarettes from
We're going to
going
need
a
to walk
corner
the governor
store.
through this before we start to freak everybody out.
A cue for the audience as to the purpose of the film. Perhaps all film. The idea that movie danger is more real to us than real danger. The warning of Contagion may be a stark one, but it is ultimately hopeful. Showing you danger in fiction so that you'll take it more seriously in reality, and arming you against it. Because if a movie is going to scare you, you best make it something worth being afraid of. Of course, Contagion wasn't as successful as Jaws. Spielberg is a populist filmmaker, and I think he struggles when he tries to make a solid, insightful statement.
And he would get up and watch a couple of films from 3 or 4 in the morning and coming in, and I'd say, "Why can't you sleep, Stephen?" "Because I still don't know what this film is about. What's it about?" I mean, I'd say, "What do you mean, what's it about?" And well, what's the central question of it?
His films are a little too simplistic for me, but then again, perhaps that's why he's so successful. Soderbergh, on the other hand, likes to dive a little deeper and actually consider the impact his films will have. Contagion makes you afraid of the ocean. It's just a shame we didn't get out of the water quick enough.
I can't sit here and tell you that it was worth it. It also made me consider the issue of whether or not movies matter anymore at all. I think there was a period where they did matter culturally. I don't think they do anymore. So that added to this sense of what was the point of 8 years of work when movies, I think, have become so disposable. And don't seem to be there aren't many opportunities for them to be taken seriously the way they were in the late 60s and 70s here in the United States.
I told them all about you.
Men, shave and get drunk.
Because you're already brilliant.